oblivion to. Welcome to the Dynasty Pulse right here on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network, the Undroppables, and also airing on terrestrial radio Tuesday mornings in Talkin, Tennessee, Talkin Sports 101.5 in West Tennessee. I'm bigz. I got Schultzy in the building. We're missing a coach, so I don't know if we go off the rails tonight or what. We got Mike Grindberg here, and we got Chev Sanders, illustrious as always. And tonight, we are very pumped. We're welcoming back a very good friend of the show, a very good close friend. He's been on my show. He's been on this show. That's Joe Kuvetakis of the Undroppables at KUVT over on the tweet machine. And this is his third time on the show. He came at us last year with the best ball stacking strategy. It was so good. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but you all should kind of go into the archives, check out that show, use that in your best ball drafts this year. Joe, here we go.
Yo!
Dude, I was just grooving to that intro music. What's up, gentlemen? So good to be back.
Terrific. Yeah, Joe is going to talk to us tonight about how strategic thinking can help us in our fantasy drafts. Let the people know who you are, Dino Joe, where they can find you, especially that Dynasty Underground show.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me. And Chev, so good to finally meet you. We've been in chats before, but I think this is our first face-to-face interaction. So great to meet you. Happy to be here. You can catch me at on the Dynasty Underground, first and foremost. That's a weekly show that me, Travis Seal, and Jax Falcone do. It's an undroppable show. And then on Twitter, just Dynasty_Joe FF, same as Blue Sky. So that's where you can catch me on social media. It's funny you mentioned the Omni stack from last year. I actually was just started working on that yesterday, and I'm working on it. It's a harder to find this year, but I'll be putting something out. I don't know if it's going to be a Twitter or an article or what, but sometime in the next week or two, I'll be dropping some OmniStack info too. So thanks for bringing that up. It's like you knew where my head was at.
How did it work out for you?
Oh, it went terribly, but it's not the OmniStack's fault.
Well, I was going to say, look at the view he's at. He must have won it because he's got this beautiful view looking over. He's got some trees in the background. Soon the sun's going to be in his eyes. He's just going to be loving life. It's because of the Best Ball Mania, right?
No. Best Ball didn't pay these bills. No. Last year, I would say the big mistake I made that I think everybody made was just going way too far into the zero RB world in a year where no running backs got hurt and running backs absolutely dominated. And, there's like the wide receiver apocalypse. So I think that was probably a big part of it. I do have some tweaks, and I'll be commenting on that just to make these teams a little bit more durable. But, we'll see. I'm not going to stop Omni stacking, and I'm excited to talk about it more when I'm ready to unveil all that.
We'll definitely have you back to do that. But for now, we'll just enjoy the scenic vistas of the Northern California Bay Area, Slay area. Shout out Helen NorCal. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Dynasty game theory.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the Dynasty game theory this week and probing the expert. So we're going to shift to the strategic mind of the Dynasty world with Joe. It's just not about player evaluations. It's about playing the long game, making moves to set your team for sustained success. Each of us will fire off a focused, challenging question for Joe, covering everything from startup draft tactics to mid-season trade puzzles to mastering FAAB strategy and navigating rookie drafts. So we'll also explore how to balance win-now moves. So with Joe's aggressive yet calculated approach, this segment will unpack the nuances of tactics of serious Dynasty gamers. So Schultzy, roll it out, buddy. All right, Chev, what's going on, my man? You're up tonight with our first question. How you doing, buddy?
Well, I'll be only referred to as my formal name here, Rhino Joe. We had Dino Joe on, so now I'm Rhino Joe.
I like it.
So we're in the heat of Dynasty startup season, and while having a plan is great, being fluid and recognizing runs and adapting remains the truest it's ever been. That being said, have you found your best successes and feel the best about your teams and startups where you're bucking the logic of your lead mates when they're, when they try to manufacture runs, or are you more so setting those trends and maybe being a little bit more aggressive on guys that you stamped early on, like you stamped as a my guy or a Dino Joe special early on in drafts?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first and foremost, the number one question is, how big is the league and how many players are you starting? If it's like a 12-team start 10, then, you want to be acquiring superstars and you're not as worried about depth. Whereas if it's like a start 11, start 12, I'm looking to trade back a lot more and acquire more picks inside of that round 12 zone, and ideally kind of in like that 6, 7, 8 round zone. That's like where kind of you make your money in like start 11, start 12s, where you just beat them in the flexes, you beat them at the wide receiver 2, the RB2, the QB2, and you let them go get that top end talent because you're just looking for dudes to plug into those spots. So it really depends on how many players you're starting and how big the league size is. That kind of dictates how I approach drafts. In terms of like what's happening in a draft, I'm usually playing start 11 or start 12. So I'm almost always trying to trade out of my first round pick. And I want to get a couple things. I want to get, picks, a little bit further back, but I also want to acquire future first round picks, second round picks, third round picks in the process. And then this is kind of a long-winded way to get to your answer, but I do trade back up as well. My main strategy is acquire firsts, hang on to those for dear life. But with the seconds and thirds you acquire, use those to time your trade ups. I like to make small jumps. If I'm 2, 3, 5 picks away and I see a tier kind of coming to an end, like a run has started, I'm not really focused on starting a run. I don't control that, but I can see when it's happening, when it's coming to an end. I will use those seconds and thirds that I acquired early to move back up and try and catch the end of that run. So that's kind of how I approach it. It's fluid for sure. I'm almost always trying to trade back early, get as much value as I can out of those first 2 or 3 picks. Make sure I've got the right, the same number, or, if it's like a start 12, right? I want 12 or 13 or 14 picks in those first 12 rounds, but I also want to be acquiring first because that's like the lifeblood, that, liquid asset that, you can trade at any time for whatever your team needs. Because the way I think about it is this, you don't know how your players are going to do when you draft them. You're not going to know until early to mid-season how your team is doing. There's nothing more valuable than first-round picks to make the trades necessary. If you decide, hey, I'm like this close, right? I just need to get one more player and I'm in this thing, or make up for injuries. So the liquidity of first-round picks is like the key to the whole puzzle. And the best way to do that is to trade down early and just make sure you get enough picks to make up for it in the flexes and those secondary spots where everyone else is going to be weaker. That's where you gain your edge. That's my approach.
One of the big Sorry, go bigz. You have something to say?
No, I was gonna kind of like add on to that and ask how you when you're arranging a trade you're in draft, you're in startup mode. How do you look at pick values? How do you assess whether what you're getting is enough or what you're giving away is too much, etc.? Like how are you doing your pick valuations?
Sure. I think just a general rule of thumb that you should stick by in startups, let's just keep it to startups. It's like if I'm moving out of the first round into the second round, right? Then I'm usually probably getting another pick, like say their third round pick, but I'm giving up my fifth. So you move back one, but you move up two. That's like a general rule of thumb that I don't think anybody in any dynasty league that kind of has any experience is like really going to balk at. You can kind of work the margins here and there and play a little bit at the beginning and end of rounds, but like move down one, move up two later is a good rule of thumb just to make sure you're not getting, fleeced. I've found, especially in the last 2 years, people are, have kind of gotten wise to people moving down in the first round, and they're not really willing to pay up. Everybody's kind of adopted that strategy. So I've kind of adopted like this, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this on the Dynasty Underground, and I called it Be the Guy, which is basically like a rope-a-dope. Like you actually trade for lesser value. You lose that trading out of the first round intentionally. Just make sure you get a first round pick and make sure you're getting a pick kind of in the first half of like the first 12 rounds in return, but lose the trade. Make it even almost so that people think you just did something stupid. Now they see you as a trade target and they start coming at you for stuff. And as you go on and as scarcity becomes more real, you can start squeezing them for more and more and more, because the moment you get a first round pick, the moment people see that people are trading first round picks, it becomes an arms race. Now they're like, oh man, if I want to compete this year, I got to start trading first round picks. Who will trade me their pick for a first round pick? I know this guy will. So you become that guy. And then later in the draft, when you've acquired 2 or 3 first round picks and you've already established yourself as like the trade candidate, then you become the dude. And what I mean by that is like, you are the market maker. You are sort of like the trade broker, right? So you get all the information. You know who wants to trade. You know what they're willing to trade. And now you've got this piece of information over here, this piece of information over here, and you can move back and forth in the draft really easily once you get a feel for that. And you can do that in a startup with a bunch of people you don't know just by feeling them out early and then just keeping, your finger on the pulse of your league mates throughout the rest of the way.
He said the title. He said the name of the movie in the movie. So dress like a fish, but be the shark.
But you know
Becoming the trade capitalist, if you will.
You actually answered my follow-up question to you really well in this last part here, because I was going to talk to you about, you mentioned earlier here, getting those lucrative 6th, 7th, 8th round picks, trying to trade into that. But people are savvy that now. They know what people are doing. They see a lot of value in that. And now people are getting that savviness. And now you just kind of explained to me how you would maneuver around that, make a trade that may not be beneficial to you to give that aura off. And I think that's a genius move. And you set this stage for something much more bigger down the line, where you're really just giving the bait and then catching the real big fish down the line.
Yeah, just a real quick example. I'm in a startup right now. I'm pulling it up. Hang on. But basically what I did in this one, I drew the 105. So nobody was taking the bait early to, give me a first round pick. So I just moved from the 105 to the 108. And in the process, I picked up a second and a third. And then I moved that 108 back to the 204 and I picked up a first there. Right. And then I traded my 210, which was like my original pick, if I'm not mistaken, for another first. But then I used that 2 and a 3 to move into the 301. So I ended up with like Bijan, 2 firsts, and Trey McBride in the first 3 rounds. But so small moves. If nobody's taking the big move, just do a small move back. They'll give up a second. They'll give up a third. And then just wait for things to start going. They will start going. Just keep your finger on the pulse. I did it again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna keep on this one. All right. Well, I got a question for you here, Joe. So we always hear that Dynasty isn't just about player values. There's a real edge in reading your league mates. I guess you touched base a little bit on this already. How much of your trading strategy leans on understanding their psychology, risk tolerance, or even just getting to know what they're prone to tilt after a couple of injuries? So what type of circle wagon do you do when a contender loses a stud, or panic buy when a rebuilder gets antsy and wants to win a deal before the deadline? Can you walk us through a time when you exploited that kind of emotional window to flip a trade in your favor?
Yeah, so I guess we're talking about the spirit of this question is basically like in season, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so two things. I think one, it just starts with like where's your team at? And then it's where's their team at? Are they like a contender that just lost like their star player? Then you can probably extract a lot of out of them because they'll feel like, hey, I'm this close. I'm the front runner. I don't want to like lose this season because the rest of my team's pretty good, right? So I will make offers to them. If I'm not a contender, like a lot of times if they lose that player, I'll just go try and trade for the injured player. Right. And I'll do that even when I am a contender. I got CeeDee Lamb this last year in 2 leagues when he had that injury late in the season. And I traded, healthy players for him because I was just like, the value of CeeDee is greater long term. So I don't know. It's kind of a case by case thing. Where is your team? Where is their team? I wish I had a better answer for you, but you really just got to think critically about, what is beneficial to your team long term. I tend to always just be targeting younger guys or guys in their prime and or just getting the liquidity of those first round picks whenever I can. And that's something that never stops. If I'm first place team or if I'm last place team, I'm always trying to get first somehow.
Anybody with a follow up there?
And we had Matt Kelly on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about acquiring backup quarterbacks and handcuff running backs. Try and get those thrown into the trade whenever you can, and just stack all of the backup quarterbacks that you can.
Oh yeah, and yeah, both. I agree on both counts. Like always, just try and get. We call it affinitively call it the chalk squeeze at the Undroppables, right? It's like whatever the offer is, just get just a little more. Just throw a third in there, just throw a fourth in there, because then you can use that marginally. You can use those to step up, right? It's the same thing as I was talking about in startups. You can do that in regular season too. It's like if you're not sure, just say, hey, listen, I'm close. I'm kind of interested, or it's not really doing anything for me. I need just a little something more. Just give me a fourth and you got a deal. Give me a third and you got a deal. And yeah, I try and do that every time. Sometimes if it's too good, I just smash.
Yeah.
I mean, if the other person is starting the conversation, sending the offer, most of the times they're going to bite on that little bit of extra.
Absolutely. You have to always assume that their opening offer isn't their best and final. So there's room for conversation. Just don't go. I'm also a big believer, like, don't go too far, right? Don't make it so that they don't take you seriously and they stop coming to you, because again, you want to be the dude that they come to for trades. So always make it reasonable and then just try and squeeze a little bit more out.
Yeah.
Ooh,
all right.
Yeah, brother.
Big's got a question for guest.
I do. Joe, you and I have played in a few leagues together, and I wanted you to explain your strategy of absolutely blowing utilizing your entire FAAB budget for the season during the first waiver period. What are some of the cons that you notice if that's your deal, and what are some of the advantages that first, like, post draft waiver wire hit and your FAAB is gone the next day? Like, what?
Well, sure. Let me give the people a little context here. One of them, you're talking about the Dukes Classic. Yeah. That is a very special case where it was an 8-team league and we all drafted under the influence without any notes and without any sort of cheat sheet, right? So we were just going off the dome, and I ended up, kind of short on a quarterback. So I was just like, I'm just going to blow most of it on a quarterback because But in an 8-team league, there's no scarcity of players, right? So what good is that FAAB money? You're always going to be able to find people.
Sure.
The other one I think you're talking about is what did I do that in Omega? Was it? No, it wasn't Omega. It was Undisputed. Yeah. So in that one, I adopted an orphan in that league last year.
Yep.
You know,
we drafted together.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm very much in like year 2 of a rebuild, and I think I'm going to be competitive this year, but I blew almost all my FAAB on Taj Brooks because he went undrafted. Now, he's a dude like, I don't think he's a world beater, but I think his situation is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 12 by 12, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so my thought process is just like, am I really going to find anybody better on the wire? Like, this is maybe the best it's going to get all season. I don't want to miss out on this dude. I think the next highest bid was basically like 50% of FAAB. So I went like, I don't know, 90% if I'm not mistaken, because I'd already spent $69 in a trade to get a trade done. That's another great trick. It's like, if you just offer $69 in FAAB, nobody says no to that ever.
Nice.
Exactly. So, you know, it's again, it's just situation dependent. If I'm like a contender, if I'm pretty well set, I'm not going to do that. But, you know, if I got nothing to lose and I'm like in a rebuild anyways, just go get a dude that can actually be impactful. And yeah, there's no limit. The FAAB is free money, right? You don't get to take it with you. There's absolutely no limit to what I would spend to a dude that could end up being a big time difference maker if just one guy ahead of him goes down.
Yeah, and I thought that my what is that, 20%, close to 18% of FAAB, I thought that was going to get it done, and then you came over the top with a bid that was like 5x mine.
Yeah, I mean, in redraft, I play it completely differently, right? I'm way more conservative in redraft, but in a dynasty league where you get to keep these guys forever, like, I don't know, you can think about it almost like on a long-term basis. It's like if I spent, you know, $450 in FAAB on this dude, but I get him for the next 8 years, what do I care?
Right. And have you noticed that when you clear everything out on FAAB, it doesn't really like come back to bite you, where you're like fighting for guys late in the season after injury and things like that? Or do you make up for it with trading?
Well, there's actually another, you know, I'm glad you brought this up because I'm a complete nerd. And I'm looking at touch logs and I'm looking at practice reports and I'm looking at, you know, all kinds of stuff. So I guess, you know, from a listener standpoint, like it depends what kind of player you are, but I'm a huge advocate and proponent of preemptive pickups. Usually guys don't just show up out of the blue, right? I mean, maybe there's an injury and all of a sudden they become relevant, but usually there are some signs that these guys are going to become relevant. And so I like to add them. You know, as soon as we start seeing those signs, I'm always keeping like 3 spots at the bottom of my roster kind of fluid just for churning and doing these preemptive pickups. Kind of when you start to see the writing on the wall that you're going to see an uptick in usage for this player, and it's usually running backs. But you know, most of the time, like again, in these 12 by 12s or 12 by 11s, it's like the dudes you're getting off the wire in season probably aren't going to be difference makers unless you're talking about a quarterback situation, in which case that can be really impactful. So I'm usually willing to forego that. And I usually try and set myself up where I've got kind of contingency plans at quarterback, but you can certainly miss out on some dudes, but I'd rather secure a dude I'm confident in their talent for the long term than, you know, just playing that game in season and hoping they're, you know, increasing value. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. FAAB is something I've never admittedly been the greatest at as a fantasy manager. And oftentimes you do find yourself with some leftover at the end of the season. Like you mentioned, it does you no good. Like it's not rolling over. It just goes away. So I think I'm going to start being more aggressive with mine, especially going after a talented, like you chasing the talent, like you mentioned in Dynasty. You get that guy forever. And if anything, you can move him later. And that, whatever you're going to collect in a trade is going to be worth more than, you know, some FAAB money. Now in redraft, I think you're right. Like you do kind of want to hold back a little bit because in redraft, you're going to get that running back who's going to pop in, that backup quarterback who's going to help a team win a championship, but then go right back to being irrelevant. So I like that aggressive nature in Dynasty, and I think I'm going to tune into some of that.
And not only that,
birthday candle.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, but like, most leagues you can trade for FAAB too, right? You can just churn some guys at the bottom of your roster that you're not actually going to play if they don't fit your build, and go get some FAAB if you're that worried about it in season. But I have not really found that it's hurt me all that much. And I'm in dynasty leagues, especially deep dynasty leagues, you're better off like right after the draft, I think is the best time to strike.
Yeah, well, exactly. Because honestly, at like with so many deep benches in Dynasty, it's rare to find a guy like that. So, some of these guys popping up right, at the beginning of the season is when it happens, and it's a right time to strike. And I use a lot of my FAAB aggressively early, even in redraft, because by the time midseason happens, I'm already in a position where I know if I'm going to be there or not, and I'm making trades to get myself over the edge. My FAAB is long in the mirror, and I've gotten, one of the Kyron Williams or the James Robinsons of the past, or the Puka Nakuas that came off. They're on my roster because I blew it all early to make sure I got that one guy that is going to year after year become the league winner. Right.
Yeah. And not only that, but I mean, if we're talking about it from a redraft lens, right? If you get a guy after week 1, you got them for 16 more weeks. If you go and spend, half of your FAAB in week 8, well, now you've only got them for half the season. So which one did you more good, right? The longer you have them on your team and they're worth the roster spot, the better off your team is.
Yes. That's that talk. That's what I like. I'm a spend it early kind of guy, just because, you see, like you said, there's diminishing returns the longer that you wait. Now, you do want to leave a little bit left in the tank, or you just want to be active right after, from a redraft perspective, obviously. Be really active after the draft, just waiver as quick as you can to try to be early to the party. Because, honestly, you're turning over that last spot. In redraft and dynasty, you should be turning over the last 1 to 2 spots on your roster constantly, just trying to unearth a diamond. So, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's, I love that you said that, because it just feels like someone, like I will, in most of the leagues I commission, I'll use most of my off-season budget up, because I'll reset it once the season starts. And so I'm going to use most of my FAAB like right after the draft, like you said.
Yep.
The rookie draft, that is.
Totally.
All right, Schultzy, it's time to hear from our sponsor.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.
Yeah, let's do that. Now, Schultzy, let's hammer off one of your questions here, bud.
All right, first off, I want to say we got Rhino Joe in the house, and he's gone for the old Bayou spelling, which makes sense because he's got the South Central Louisiana State Mud Dogs jersey in the background.
You see, it's a triple entendre. And then we got some Jack Beshlove, former LSU tight end, in there too.
That's impressive jersey knowledge right there. Holy cow.
That's funny. All right, we got I'll do a little bit of we haven't touched on any like specific players, so I'll hit a little bit of that, but also tied into like the dynasty game strategy as well. But recently you tweeted about Rome Odunze and how he is the cryptocurrency of wide receiver values, and I love this. It is spot on. So right after the Bears let Keenan Allen go, everybody was in, right? Mark him down for the big slot role. This guy's gonna eat. Like everybody was in on Rome Odunze. Well, they go out and draft Luther Burden, who's probably going to take the slot role. And everyone was like, whoa, now we're backing off again a little bit here. A couple of weeks later, Ben Johnson's saying some praise about Rome Odunze, and everybody's right back in. So I guess for me, where's the needle right now for you personally on Rome Odunze? Also, where do you see his value ending up by the time the season rolls around? And for the strategy here, when is the time to strike on a scenario like this? Whether you're buying or selling, are you aggressively trying to do it like, off the emotional reaction of this stuff, or are you playing the long game with some of that?
Hold on. Before you answer this, Joe, I saw you crack your neck twice here, so I think you're bracing yourself for the long haul here. So I'm really interested to see what this answer comes about.
I always crack my neck. I hate to just be like, oh, buy low and sell high, right? Like that's not like super useful. Like no kidding. It's like you want to be able to see the writing on the wall and kind of act beforehand. And I don't think any of us saw, especially after they drafted Loveland in the first round, I don't think any of us saw the Bears taking Burden in the second round. And then, right when that happened, which you couldn't have possibly known about, like your sell window was probably gone and people started freaking out. And in that situation, now he's become undervalued. So I'm not selling at that point. Some people, I guess it depends on the type of player, right? For some assets, it does make sense to just sell low and get out. And for some assets, it makes sense to buy high and hold. But like with Rome Odunze, it's like, listen, this guy was it's not only a first round pick, a top 10 pick. That's incredible draft pedigree, and receivers that are drafted in that range are usually hits ultimately. So he just was a clear hold to me. And do I wish I had sold before the draft? Sure. I think that's kind of when we started to see a peak in his value post 2024 draft, which is probably when it was at its highest. But, with an asset like him, kind of a blue chip player, like maybe, the underlying metrics aren't good. That first year was not good. And usually that doesn't turn into a super elite player. So if you can get something to like a mid first round pick out of him, yeah, go ahead, sell if you're feeling uneasy about it. But if you're selling him for, I don't know, late first or an early second or anything like that, or equivalent value, I'd say you're better off just holding and wait till he has a big game or two, because we don't know how this is going to play out. We have no idea, but right now it's just, to me, he's a hold. I'm also not buying, I should say. Like, the buy window is probably gone. The sell window is probably gone. It's just, this is a clear hold to me because he's such a valuable asset, but you also don't want to overpay or sell for too low. So that's kind of a non-answer answer, huh?
Yes.
It's the truth, though.
It's the truth. I mean, we're living in a world where it's much less like what's actually happening and just based on vibes. And Twitter will tell you, the Twitter X sphere will tell you, hey, Rome Odunze is dead. Go buy Rome Odunze. And then you go talk to somebody that has Rome Odunze, and they're like, bro, he's a top 10 pick last year. He had 100 targets in a broken offense. He had, the second most unrealized air yards. Excuse me. Yeah, that's right. The second most unrealized air yards. I'm looking at it right now amongst all wide receivers. And then, there's some things here. There's something there very clearly.
Yeah, not only that, but like if you go back and watch the film, I mean, Caleb Williams missed him badly on a couple of huge downfield plays. If he had just connected on like two of those, he hits different thresholds from a points per game basis, and the outlook on him as a fantasy asset is completely different. So, part of it's situation and part of it's like, production, actual production is where the rubber meets the road. That's usually right, but I'm just willing to take the bet or, hold on to the asset with a guy like Rome because the pedigree and the situation is still good. And, DJ Moore might not be long for that team. We'll see after this year. And maybe Caleb Williams sucks and they're all going to be terrible. We don't know, but the bet on talent and the bet on first round top 10 pedigree is, usually a safer one.
DJ Moore is there for 2 years. He's uncuttable with that contract for at least through 2026.
Hey, you can do anything you want to if you want to bad enough.
Sure. And Chev, who's first on that list? Was that Trey Tucker? Most unrealized air yards?
Unrealized air yards? No, it's Calvin Ridley, actually.
Oh, I was going to say it's got to be Trey Tucker.
No, it's just Trey Tucker's the king of wind sprints from 2024. First crowned by Alec Pierce in 2023. The second inaugural winner of the air, like the cardio kings for 2024 is Trey Tucker.
Love it. I love it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think personally, and we're not here to talk about what I think. I want to know more from the brain of Dino Joe. I want to know more. And so, I'm glad that you said that about Rome Odunze, because you'll see on Twitter, oh, he's a complete fade, he's this, he's that. I want to buy at a depressed price, which people are getting a little bit more sharp and being a little bit more patient. It's kind of ticking me off a little bit, because we should have done what we did with JSN after his rookie year and was like, hey, look at all these historical comps of how bad he is. And like pushed him down like a wide receiver 40 range, but he's still around like wide receiver 19 or 20. And that bottles my mind in a way that I can't fathom.
Yeah, that's what that top 10 draft capital will do, though, right? People are just hanging on. They're anchoring to that, and I can't blame them. But you're right. You'd expect to see what happened with JSN, and it's a very similar story. The only difference is like the competition didn't get a lot tougher for JSN in year 2, where it has for Rome. So it's a tricky case. It's a tricky case.
It's very unique, and I'm glad that the nuanced thing to do from an experienced player is to just hold, and then if you want to be in, use that as confirmation bias. If you want to be out, try to sell high.
Yep. Yeah. If somebody makes you a great offer, feel free to take it, but I'm not actively trying to sell them. I don't think my league mates are that smart or dumb.
Well, I mean, JJ took a lot of heat on his show because he sold him for a first round pick. I think it was 108, which was kind of like a lateral move when he ended up picking, I think it was Ibuka in that stage. So you just kind of just rolled over the 1 year there and kind of similar situations and all that kind of stuff. So, rolling over that, you're rolling over your asset, essentially getting lateral returns. So I see that as a good move. He took a lot of heat on that, but it is what it is. Now, what is awesome is our Fantasy Sports Advice Network rookie guide that we just launched on the website. So check out the merch shop that has got all the great gear, as the Dynasty Pulse new hat that has been dropped. So check all that stuff out. And now let's get into our next segment, Joe. We got some veteran presence back, some fresh value. We're going to be, following up last week's deep dive with, last week we talked about the wide receivers, some veterans coming back. Let's talk about the running backs now. So we're going to shift our attention there where, some respect needs to be deserved here. So we're going to talk about some running backs that might have some fresh value that are kind of in the veteran presence in this space. Now, Joe, you said you been contemplating this for over 48 hours in our pre-show meeting. So I'm intrigued to hear about your player and what he brings to the table this year in 2025.
Well, when I saw the show sheet, I was like, that's a really good question because, we go through prospect season and rookies and just think about how all these veterans are going to get nuked and all these marginal guys are going to, have their, pie eaten into and what have you. Right. So I was like, thinking to myself, who is just everybody kind of gotten tired of, but just keeps on banging out, good seasons. And the answer I came to, who I think is really undervalued, I actually tried trading for him earlier this week, is Tony Pollard.
No!
Tony, Rhino Joe doesn't like that. So let me finish, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. But man, listen, he got QB upgrade from like one of the worst in the league. No real competition added in that backfield. He's had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. One of them was coming off of an injury, and last year we actually saw him start to regain a lot of that explosiveness. He's been hovering around 40 receptions plus every single year, and the last 2 years he scored like 4 and 5 touchdowns. I think for a dude that's getting his workload, you can kind of expect that to be around 7 or 8 touchdowns. So there's like some touchdown regression coming as well. So everything around him got better except for the running back competition. If this is a better offense, we can expect a spike in those touchdowns and more sustained drives. So he's still 27, almost 20. I think he'll be 28 by the time the season starts, but he's just an underappreciated guy. I think you get him for like a mid-late second in most leagues just from a value standpoint. And he's somebody you can plug in for any week he's playing into your RB2 or any of your flex spots and get pretty consistent production.
Yeah, I think you're dead on here, man. He had that nasty leg fracture in 22. You definitely could tell he lost some juice in the 23 season, his last season with the Cowboys. But you mentioned he still ran for 1,000 yards, still caught 55 balls. And that was one of my big concerns going into last year with him was like, hey, that injury might have taken his juice away. And you hit it. It came back. Like, he's still a very good back. And, yeah, you get the QB upgrade. The offense is going to be better. I'm in on some Tony Pollard.
Yeah, and everybody just thought Tajay Spears was going to, overtake him, and that never happened. He became the guy. And the running back that Callahan and that offense trusted more often and just used Spears to spell him. So, at any running back's an injury risk, but he's, kind of consistently gotten on the field no matter the situation and, stayed on the field pretty darn well and produced at every turn, regardless of if he's recovering from injury or just in a bad situation.
Totally. He stole your guy, didn't he? Their Chev. Is that what happened?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were disagreeing with me.
He's just gonna have to pivot. That's all. All right, Schultzy. Let's get to your guy.
Yeah, I'm a big. I'm a Titans fan. That's a Corey Davis jersey back there.
Oh, nice. Love it.
So yeah,
being the top 10 picks that didn't pan out, huh?
Woo. Yeah.
Got him.
Super cool. Hey, Schultzy, you shut your mouth. You drafted Justin Blackmon in the top 10.
Hey, you know what? That wasn't a talent issue, my friend.
Yeah, Treylon Burks jersey is just off camera.
Yeah, the Treylon.
All right, I'm going to take it over. Yeah. I'm going to take it over some Travis Etienne. He's gotten completely lost in the picture here with some of the Tank Bigsby hype, them drafting Bashal Tutin. Now there is going to be some trade rumors looming here. And if he gets traded, that's a plus for him, dude. This offense last year was a mess. The offensive line was garbage. Like, he just couldn't get anything going. He was coming off an RB3 season, and the production last year wasn't great. And I think a lot of people are soured because of that. I'm looking for him to bounce back this year. Even if he gets traded, even if he doesn't, like, this Liam Cohen run scheme is going to boost the run game for the Jags. You saw him take the Bucks from like 30th to, I don't remember, top 10 or whatever it was. But the run game was explosive last year for the Bucks. You're going to see some boost here for the Jags run game. Now, the O-line's going to roll over 3 new starters, potentially 4. And this is being molded by a new regime, being molded by guys brought in by Cohen. So, yeah, I'm looking for a run game boost here for the Jags. And I don't know if we're necessarily – I know everybody loves to say the Bucky Irving situation with Bashal Tutin. I don't know if it's going to come that quickly, given the fact that you might have Etienne and Tank in front of him still. But Travis has 1 year left on his contract with the Jags. So even if he doesn't get traded this year, he's going to be somewhere new next year. And I think that's just going to be good for him. Hopefully it's going to be on a team like, a competing team. Commanders has been a big spot people have wanted to see, and I think he'd smash there. All that to say, you're getting an offensive upgrade here. And then I'm just looking for him to have that bounce back season. He only had 2 touchdowns last year. Like, that one's going to jump back up. I think people are soured on the fact that a lot of people got really burned by Etienne last year, and they're not going to be looking to go back to the well there. And I think you can take advantage of that.
Leave it to the Jags fan to bring up Etienne, but I actually agree
Absolutely.
with you. I thought about him for this list too, because he is, I think, drastically undervalued. Even if he does get sort of buried by Tutin, which I don't think that's going to happen because Tutin is a pretty raw prospect. I mean, there's the fumbling issues, which have already, shown themselves in OTAs. But I also think that his game is a little bit messy, right? He's got a lot of jukes, and his athleticism is unreal, and his moves are unreal. But I think it could drive coaches a little bit nuts the way he over jukes in the backfield and doesn't just cut and go. That could land him in the doghouse. There's multiple things that could land Tutin in the doghouse his rookie year, which would give plenty of runway and breathing room for Etienne to, kind of regain some of that old form. But, he's like, two-way go is a term that's used often in trading when you're getting two outs instead of, for one asset, right? It's usually like a draft pick and another player. But Etienne as an entity in his own right is like a two-way go too, because he could, return value just based on how low he's going this year. But then also in a new situation next year, to your point, he could drastically rise in value. So this is one of those buy lows. It's like an asset that nobody really wants to touch, that it's clear. I think it's going to stay low, and a lot of people might not be patient enough to wait, but I think you're right on, Schultzy.
Yeah, I think if you're a competing team, you can go get him for a second. You can go get him for a third and a lower end player. And yeah, that's a trade I'd be in on.
Love it. Now, bigz, who's your guy?
Well, I was kind of waffling back and forth between a few of them. There are a handful of veteran running backs who are the lead back in their room, and their team did not invest any draft capital in a backup. But I'm going to go with James Conner. We just talked about him on our fantasy forecast show about being wary of him. He is a 30-year-old running back. He's been in the league for 9 years. This is his ninth year. And he hasn't put together more than one. He's never had more than one season where he's in a row where he's played all games, right? But here's the thing: Arizona loves him. They went and they signed him to a 2-year extension, so they think that there's some tread on the tires still. And then they do have a backup in Trey Benson, who they had in the building when they gave James Conner his extension. So they knew that. They already knew Trey Benson was there. So what incentive do they have for kind of thinking that Trey Benson is going to take over that backfield in the next couple of years? I don't think it's going to happen. I love Trey Benson. I have a ton of shares, but the Arizona Cardinals don't see him as a threat to James Conner's job. Over the last couple of years, he's had 250 and he had 249 fantasy points last year in 16 games. He finished as RB11. That's a very good spot, especially if you are you're in a startup draft and you trade back to get some value. You grab somebody and then you can fall back and grab James Conner. He's had over 200 carries the last 2 years in a row, over 1,000 yards the last 2 years in a row. And last year he had 55 targets and over 40 catches. So it's not like he is a dead spot in the receiving game. I think if he's returning RB1 talent, where he's being drafted is absolutely a steal.
Yeah, I love that take too. I really I was just talking about this the other night. The episode of Dynasty Underground should be dropping tonight or tomorrow, but I was just talking about the Trey Benson thing. And I was arguing with Jackson Trav, and I was like, guys, like Trey Benson didn't carve out any sort of role in his rookie year. So as high as we were on him last year, and he was like the second or third running back drafted last year, like that's out the window now. James Conner is entrenched, and short of a James Conner injury, like he ain't going away. He's trusted, and Benson is not. So right. I completely agree with that take. And he's also like the perfect dude to take in a startup, because you can get James Conner in like the 10th round or something. He could be like your sacrificial RB2 or even RB1, like hero RB. And then you just take, a bunch of rookies in rounds 14, 15, 16, waiting for one of them to pop. And you just ride James Conner until the wheels fall off. So he's like, the ideal dude to grab as just a plug and play RB2, borderline RB1, while you wait for maybe more explosive options to, carve out roles. But, it ain't Trey Benson yet. Maybe he's gotten better, and maybe he'll be the game will have slowed down for him a little bit, and we'll kind of see his full blossom this year. But to bigz' point, that 2-year extension tells you everything when they had the cheaper option already in the building.
Yeah, he in the Grindberg Invitational startup that we're in the midst of, he just went in the 10th round as the 1009.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All
there
right,
Chev. Damn, I'm good at those startup values, huh?
There you go. Do you want to round a show off? We're almost at the time here, so let's talk about your player, and then we'll let Joe talk about what he's doing these days.
Yeah, it's Alvin Kamara. I mean, we all know that initially it was Tony Pollard, but same brains, rhinos and dinos think alike. So Alvin Kamara for me going into his inaugural year with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. I mean, he's not a workhorse per se, but he gets work, like he handles the lion's share of the volume for the last 3 years, and I feel like he's criminally undervalued because everybody's kind of expecting the fall off. Like we had some putrid offensive lines where he ended up averaging 3.5, right at 4 yards a carry for a couple years, and didn't have as many explosive runs. He was still catching the ball at a high level. So yeah, Alvin Kamara for me is the veteran guy that I want some respect put on. Grindberg took him in the 8th of the Grindberg Invitational startup, and I fell to my knees on the way to the cement aisle. So I was in there. I was on the way to the cement aisle. I ended up falling on my knees and like tearing my shirt off Hulk Hogan style. And they were like, "Sir, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And I was like, but you don't understand what Grindberg just did. And then the security came, and it was real weird. So yeah, Alvin Kamara.
That's awesome. I'll get in my guy too, because I think we might have some time here. But why don't you comment on Alvin Kamara there, Joe? That was awesome.
I mean, I've been a Kamara truther from day one. He just keeps pumping out big reception seasons, and actually, like the last couple of years, particularly last year, I think we saw him get the most rush attempts he's ever had. So, yeah, you're not going to get any argument from me. That dude's contact balance still looks elite. And as long as he's got that superpower, he's going to be a relevant running back. And that's always the thing that's made him special, is that contact balance and his receiving ability. Neither of those have gone away. And with a rookie quarterback, I imagine there might be, more dump offs than your typical year.
Or a rookie quarterback or Spencer Rattler. There's just going to be some dump offs.
Yeah, either way.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about my guy real quick, and that's CMC. And, he had an off year last year. He was injured for most of it. But, I was worried about him, coming back from the injury, what San Francisco would do. But they did nothing but offload some of their, backups there. Jordan Mason is no longer there. Elijah Mitchell is no longer there. They brought in Jordan James, which, could spell him for a little while. But, Isaac Garendo is the main backup. And it looks like, without Debo there, they're going to open things up. They're going to ride Christian McCaffrey till he's done. And I think you got another season or two of high impact play from him. He may not be RB1 overall, but I still can think he's going to be flirting with the top 5. And where he's going in startups right now, where he's going in redraft. I mean, maybe not in redraft at this stage if he's still going in the 1st or 2nd round. I think there's optimism here in buying him or drafting him at cost in Dynasty. And I like his bounce back here, and he's going in a good range, and he could very well turn things around and be the number 1 overall guy. But I'm not expecting that.
How many guys can you get at the end? Let's say redraft or best ball. How many guys can you get at the end of round 1 or beginning of round 2 that can give you 27 points a game? The answer is none. Right? He's such a unique value proposition. I mean, in redraft, I think it's a no-brainer. Yeah, maybe the wheels fall off, but he's worth the bet. In Dynasty, it's a different story, but he's definitely worth a flyer if you can get him on the cheap and you're in a win now window. That's exactly the kind of guy you want to add to get you over the hump.
There you have it. All right, Biggs. Before we let you sign off with everything, let's get Joe talking about what he's doing right now with the Undroppables. There's a lot of awesome stuff going down there. I know he was a big part of helping with the UN score and his show going on right now. Joe, tell us what you got going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thank you for bringing up the UN score. I do think that's the best wide receiver model in the business. If you've had your rookie draft yet already, or if you haven't had your rookie draft, I still think it's worth every penny. It's $20. I wrote all the profiles. Our boy Jay Wood created the model. And this thing historically has just an incredibly high hit rate. Guys like Puka Nacua, it really likes Emeka Egbuka this year. Right. It had Malik Neighbors at the top last year. So definitely go check out the UN model. You can find that on our website at the Undroppables. You can find me on Twitter, Dynasty_Joe, and please subscribe both to our YouTube channel where you can find this show and the Dynasty Underground. And please subscribe on all your podcast catchers.
And one more thing, though, is the Undrafted just dropped on the YouTube channel. Now is going to be a full-time show on our channel, which is so awesome for the brand. Jax is his world-renowned show, his podcast is now on the YouTube channel. So that's a huge thing for us as Undroppables. So really pumped to see that go down and get that channel the well-deserved respect that it should get.
There's one show that you guys are forgetting, and because of that, I'm gonna become unhinged.
And also shout out to Travis Seal, who is really doing working overtime, getting our YouTube launched and getting all that stuff going. So like we've got just this really awesome ecosystem going on in the Undroppables family right now. A lot to check out, and between the model and our podcasts, like I just think we're kind of the best in the businesses in terms of the dynasty game right now, and thinking about the dynasty game.
Love it. All right, bigz.
Hard agree.
Harder agree.
Well, that's going to do it for this show and this week. And we will be back next week with another show during another week. And we thank you very much for watching or listening if you're listening on the terrestrial radio. And we hope you win.
Hope you win, folks. Peace out. Thanks, Joe.
I hope you win.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I don't want you guys to